Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Gary Holt from Exodus and formerly from Slayer, and you're listening to The Razor's Edge.
Welcome to the Razor's Edge build-up of Damnation Festival coverage. Today we've got Gav and Paul with us. How are you both?
Doing great, Cass. And you?
I'm not too bad, thank you. And you, Gav?
I'm magic. Just delighted we've got Paul here taking the hit for the questions this time.
Absolutely. So before we delve into the depths of the festival, Gav, you're a bit of a public face. So can we hear a little bit from you, Paul, and an overview of what your role is within the festival?
I guess I'm the far more boring of the two of us. I bring, I guess, a bit of the realism to Gav's hopes and ambitions. So I suppose my main part that I play is all the very boring admin logisticy bits, sorting out arranging the production for the stages, getting in all the backline, helping Gav kind of figure things out, like what's the best kind of flight routes, all of that kind of things. I deal with ticketing, I deal with carers tickets, I deal with the student discounts. So all of the very kind of the boring admin bits of the festival is kind of where I mainly sit, and then Gav gets the fun part of booking the bands, but paying the band bills as well. So,
and crowd no top on.
I thought that was going to be your next question. But Gavin, what is it you do? I organise all the stages. I book it. What do you do, Gav? You know what? I go on the forums and let people terrorise me day in, day out. That's what I do.
Well, yes. All the better the man that does it lets people terrorise them on the forum, eh? Yeah. It's nice to hear a little bit from you, Paul, and understand, what your role is in the festival. Because I don't think we never see you much either at the festival. Vaguely dart past us all occasionally in the press room, and that's it.
Yeah, I tend to be kind of a bit of a blur. The days go by quite quickly. And I think I've said this to Gavin. I'm hoping this year it'll be better, because I think we're getting better at letting go and letting other people kind of take the reins a little bit. But generally speaking, I find it really hard to relax and enjoy Damnation or Night of Salvation. I'm always kind of running between stages. Is everything running okay? Checking in with the stage managers. So I'm hoping this year we can kind of relax a little bit, let the crew that we've hired to do their jobs, and I can, myself and him, can hopefully relax and actually enjoy some of the excellent bands we've booked for this year.
It must be difficult for you both, though, to let go of something that you've been doing for so long as just a duo.
It is difficult. We're actually, because we've got a guy Marios, who was involved last year with production, but we kind of gave him a role as production manager last year, and then kind of followed him about everything he'd done, and we're copied in every email and chased up with the correspondence. So this year we've been kind of mindful to be like, right, okay, between Paul and I, we will organise the sense that we will get for all the bands, the 36 bands, and get the details. But at some point we need to hand that role over, and come the day, ultimately coming to me, and to a lesser extent Paul, because he does know a wee bit more of production than I do, which is absolutely zero. On the day, there's only so much. Somebody comes to me and goes, "Oh, by the way, that wire that came out the drum kit that's supposed to go into the speaker isn't working." I'm not used to you. I'm as much used to you as if it was point me at a car engine and saying make the car go again. So sometimes I'm kind of there as part of the problem or the solution without actually offering anything to it. So yeah, it's difficult to let go, but at the same time, like last year as well, we were there and we had a crew of 12. We had God knows how many staff we were actually paying and over and above a volunteer crew. The amount of people there pecking for lights and sound and or the security there. Like tens of thousands of pounds worth of people, and I've got an earpiece in, and I'm a bit like, what exactly am I doing? Because everybody's got a role here. Everybody's got a role, and I've got this in. I'm like, I felt as if I was just really becoming a bit of noise in it. Fair enough. When shit hits the fan, it's going to come to me. I'll be the guy when the tour manager's having a hairy canary about the dressing room not being big enough, or the band want X, Y, and Z on top of it. But ultimately, they things you can get in touch with me quite quickly, or I'll be in the production office. Otherwise, you're kind of just sitting there. And I felt last year I said that to Paul at the time. I says, I feel like me being part of it is actually becoming problematic, because I'm inserting myself in problems that I probably shouldn't be. And that's getting in the way of people that then are there to do that job. They're a bit like, well, why bother if Gav's here anyway?
Yeah, I remember I saw you very briefly last year. You went into the loser, the press room with We Lost the Sea to have a chat and said to us all, "Don't tell anybody I'm in here. I just need 5 minutes." Yeah.
I mean, I suppose. I mean, from last year, we were going there. It was a case, and there was a lot of unknowns, and I mean, it was at one point, me and Paul are at the back trying to get a van move so Wolves in the throne room's bus could go in, and then we're loading in the merch through the venue when the fans are in. There was a lot of stuff you're a bit like, you're only going to find out how to tackle these problems once you've done it once, you know. Yeah. So it was a bit like that, wasn't it, Paul? We were kind of finding a lot of stuff on the day.
Yeah, and I mentioned to Kat just before we kind of started that when we went down this weekend for the production meeting with the venue, it felt a lot more troubleshooting rather than trying to figure it out as we go. Because having been there last year, we knew, okay, there weren't enough food vendors. Everyone complained about that. We get that. So that was number one on our list, make sure there's more food vendors. People want a bit more seating in the venue. So we spent a bit of time looking around, where can we put a bit more seating? What can we do in terms of making it a little bit better for them? So this year very much was about like just kind of troubleshooting and refining what can we do to improve it, build on the few mistakes we made last year and kind of make it an overall better experience for everyone. But you learn that with time, and that just takes time kind of getting comfortable in the venue. And I think we're starting to get that now.
Well, yeah, it was your first edition of it at the Beck. So obviously there was always going to be things you needed to look at, which was going to be my question that you've already answered. Thanks, Paul. But the thing that was really striking for a lot of us was how you would dress the venue as well with the posters and things like that. And it had a bit of Damnation stamp on it rather than just looking like this big, vast space that no one had ever been to before.
That was a huge thing for us when we were planning last year. One of the things we loved being at Leeds Uni. It was great. The team there were great. And we were there from 2008 till 2020. And it became really familiar, really comfortable. It was really easy for us to set up and run Damnation there. But it always felt like we were just intruding on a student union for the day. You still had students coming into the co-op and buying their weekly shop and whatever else. And it never felt that it was Damnation space. We got to intrude for 12 hours for a Saturday, and that was it. And one of the big advantages of the BEC for us was that it's a blank canvas. And the owner, a guy named Simon, is pretty much do what you want with it. Within reason, it's your space to do with as you see fit. So for us, it was a big thing about, okay, what can we put in place to dress it and make it feel a little bit more like Damnation? And so we had things like the scrims outside as people walked in the walkway with all the photos from the previous years. And we had the ability to put in the big screens with the artwork screens on the sides of the stages in Arena 1 and Arena 2 last year and stuff like that, and just made it feel a little bit more like it was Damnation space. And that was kind of a big thing for last year. So that'll all be kind of there again this year.
Yeah.
And the thing with that as well is we hope we will build on a wee bit. I mean, ticket sales aren't as strong as we want them to be, so there's like, you need to be clever with the budget. But ultimately, if we're there for a sustained period of time, that every year you come, there'll be new wee quirks, and then I'll feel more and more like Damnation every time you come, because we'll have the ability. Because, well, in year one, if you take the big, the huge dressing that you've got round about the stages, that's thousands of pounds worth of material and printing. So, but that's done. It doesn't cost you another couple of grand this year to do it. It's already there, and you own it. So then you can look for the next year and say, right, what else can we buy? What else can we do to make this feel more like Damnation when you get there? So yeah, I mean, people are asking the question this year, would you go back to Leeds? No, even so much that just to go back to the small capacity. I feel what we thought we'd go back and just have that feeling of losing all that again. Not being able to do simple things like being able to put up giant photography and have your stages looking like the main stages at a major outdoor festival would be a real kick in the teeth.
Yeah, definitely. I think there was some negative points on the form which we were talking about earlier, and I mean they were very few and far between. It was mainly food and seating, isn't it? But how do you both feel like you're handling that? Because it must be at times great on either of you to just see people only hone on the fact that they queued an hour for a pizza and didn't see all of these bands for this price.
But I get it, and I guess it's probably easy for them. They don't have to. It's not their role to have to think about the time and energy and hours that we put into putting it together. That's not their job. Their job is to turn up and have a great day. And if you have to spend an hour queuing for a cheese pizza because that's all that's available, then that's going to impact on their enjoyment of it. So I do kind of get it. I think sometimes it does go a bit beyond that now in terms of some of the criticisms seem a bit unrealistic and kind of unnecessary. Now we had one last year. Someone was complaining that there weren't enough female toilets, and they're like, well, we put some outdoors. There was extra cubicles outdoors for that reason, and they were like, well, why wasn't there more indoors? And I was like, well, what do you expect us to do? It's a fixed building. Do you expect us to like build an extension to put in more toilets? Like
there's not a lot of females at Damnation, to be fair. I've never the toilet. Yeah.
To be fair, you could probably accommodate all the women in Beckerina with one toilet anyway, you know?
Yeah, possibly.
Depressingly. So, yeah, I mean, the same as Paul says, it's up to us to make sure that these wee minor annoyances at the time they're major. That's the problem with internet though these days, isn't it? It's like it's so accessible just to get straight up, and like people are just so used to like, oh, I'll give that taxi driver 1 star, or I'll slag off my delivery, the food that I got for the local Chinese, because I can do it. People just used to having that instant gratification of just being able to complain on the spot. And I think even mostly people that were complaining, even in the queues for the food, a lot of them, if you took that opportunity away from do it that moment in the phone, would they go back at night and say, I'm going to log into Damnation and complain? Probably not. So, it's frustrating, but at least I'd much prefer if people had more genuine complaints, unlike someone who doesn't want to use outside toilets but complaining the inside toilets are too busy. A genuine complaint, I would rather we knew about it so we could at least address it. So we could be like, because as I say, food vendors, a few extra food vendors isn't a difficult task as a promoter in an event. Putting some extra seating, there'll never be enough seating. I mean, after this year, I guarantee people complain there's still not enough seating, but you literally have to make it an indoor seated event for everyone to get a seat when they wanted it, and that's not realistic either. So, it does get you down when sometimes you walk away from an event and you're like, oh, that was absolutely spectacular, and you could see how much people are enjoying it, and then the first thing you read is, I don't know, I had a shit day because the taxis outside were charging too much to get a mile down the road. You're like, I mean, will we ever properly be able to tackle it? I mean, that's every event in the UK every night of the week. You know, it's like these things happen. It's like, might as well complain about the weather. It's like we've got as much control about some greedy taxi driver sitting outside the premises trying to rob you as we do is it going to be sunny or wet in the day, you know?
Mm-hmm. Definitely. But this year we've seen the festival grow again with the Night of Salvation. So there's 15 bands this year. Was it always your plan to kind of grow it to be a prequel night, as it were?
Was it?
You want to take that one? It was never, because I suppose it was always initially, because I suppose it depends on how many people know on what they know about Night of Salvation. And Night of Salvation has been running since 2010. I ran it as an entirely separate event to Damnation, as like a little pre-show and lead, something for people to do when they got into town a day early, and that's how it started. And then we decided to bring it in-house in 2020. Brought it properly into Leeds Uni, and it seemed to work really well, and people liked the idea of the kind of the exclusive sets and the something slightly different that made it feel like it was a little something extra. And then this year it just kind of exploded a little bit in terms of the amount of sets that became available, of bands willing to go, yeah, we'll do this album for the first time, or we'll do this kind of special set. And it kind of grew into its own huge thing, which in some ways has been great. But in other ways, it's kind of been like this weird kind of albatross around our necks, because I guess how we always viewed it was they were two separate events. Damnation was always Damnation. And if you wanted to come along and do Salvation on the Friday night, that was an entirely separate, paid-for, ticketed event that you could do as a whole separate thing. But I guess for a lot of people, they now view it as just one and the same, and they now see Damnation as a 2-day event, which for some people has been a bit off-putting. A lot of people have liked Damnation turning up for one day, going bananas over 12 hours and kind of being done with it. And now they're feeling that, well, I have to do the 2 days, which obviously was never our intention. But there seems to be, when we kind of get the feedback, when we're reading up on the feedback, some people have kind of started to see it that way, and that certainly was never how either of us kind of viewed or intended it, but it seems to be that's how some people have started to perceive it. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is, it doesn't matter if it's the truth or it's not the truth, it's perception that's killing us, you know. It's somebody's going to go, oh, I've been at Damnation for 10 years, but I'm not coming this year because I can't afford the 2 days. You're like, I mean, the truth of the matter is Damnation hasn't changed. It's exactly the same one-day event. And even the price point, by the time that Converge was doing Jane Donut last year, the price point for Damnation the last 6 to 8 weeks was £75 plus booking fee. The ticket for Damnation this year is £75 plus booking fee. That's just a fact. But people see it as £120 because they're taking the combo ticket and adding the booking fee to that. And then they're like, well, we put the hotels on top of it. They're like, fuck, I could come to Damnation last year for 75 quid, and this year it's cost me 400 because then they start to add the hotel fees on top as well. And as I say, it's not true, but if people feel it's true and it's stopping them from coming, then it's become a bigger problem. It's weird because although Damnation isn't selling as strong as last year's Damnation, we're already like 3 or 4 times the amount of ticket sales on last year's Salvation. So when we actually break it down, it's going to make an odd one when we break it down the actual numbers here. Salvation might be financially quite successful, but what damage did it do to Damnation? By the time it's done, and we'll look at it and see, well, what's the best route forward? Because it certainly can't be this mixed up what it is right now. That is, as Paul explained, some people are seeing Damnation it's only 2 days or nothing. Some people are maybe saying, oh, your lineup's been weakened across 2 days, which is another. It's not true, but if that's the perception, that's not great either. Somebody's like, oh, if I can't get to see Bosch doing Odd in the War, then I'm not going to bother Mars coming to see the Damnation Day. Whereas no one was saying that last year about Celeste or We Lost the Sea. I'm not saying, oh, if I don't get to see the part songs, then I'm just not going to bother coming to Damnation at all. Whereas we have seen a wee bit of that for this year.
So how did the collaboration come about with Church Records over the Friday night? And did you give some control to Justin and Sammy over the lineup, or was it something that I can see you shaking? Or was it something you collaborated on all together? I could see you shaking your head there, that's all.
It just we're very controlling when it comes to the lineup. And we're even when we broke up sponsorship deals. I mean, if you'd even call them that, it's more of a partnership or help each other rather than any real financial investment in it. But it came about because we have 3 stages at Damnation that were sponsored. I'm not even sure at the time if I went back to like I Saw Merch and Holy Goat and asked them if they wanted to pay more, because the companies, they do pay to have their sponsorship on those stages. I'm not even sure if we went back at the time or we already had in our mind that we're going to try and do something black metal focused, which suited Cult Never Dies. And we had a couple of record labels, Pelagic and Church Road Records, and that. We thought, well, it'd be quite good to do a 3rd stage, a bit of a showcase. So I think that's how it originally came about. Church Road Records were one of those. I mean, they just get such a great label and so many great bands. Yeah. I mean, you could take those. They've got 5 bands because one of them's the Sun's Journey Through the Night playing the other stage, but we wanted to keep that in the black metal theme. But you could take those 5 bands and replace them with another 5 bands for Church Road Records and still have a great stage. So yeah, there was that. I suppose there was a wee bit of conversation, which a bit more of us going, here's 8 or 9 bands that we really like for your roster. Basically, who's our agents? Because Justine and Sammy ultimately don't book those bands. So it wouldn't have been a proper route to go to Justin and Sammy and say, can we get Harriet? I mean, when you get Harriet, you need to go through Ian Shaw's the Harriet's booking agent. So there was conversations with it, and they were delighted. And it would have been an odd one if we went and said, oh, here's 8 or 9 bands, and they came back and said, well, 2 of them are shit. You know what I mean? It's like, it's their band. So they were fairly supportive of whatever direction you're taking. Then great. They gave us a wee bit of feedback. This band like Celestial Sanctuary, they'll have new music out, or Orms have released a new album here, whereas this band, because we asked them like bands like Respire, but they're like Canadian, so then it's about like you get a whole different ballgame trying to get a band that don't really have that big clout in the UK to come across their set. So stuff like that, it was definitely a conversation, but in terms of controlling the booking, we kind of knew what we wanted to do with it, and it worked out. And as I say, once you get a label like that, yeah, if it'd been a different 5 bands, it would still have been great.
Definitely. And the big draw for the Friday night, obviously, is the exclusive sets. How much work do you guys have to put into getting those exclusive sets? And are the bands open to doing them? Is it something that they're excited about doing?
I think it depends on the band and what you're asking of them. So some of them, yes, they are. And I think when we kind of started, or when we started kind of looking at Fridays being something a bit exclusive and kind of doing album sets in fall and whatever else, once agents kind of catch wind of that, they'll also come to us and go, Band X are open to doing this debut album or a fan selected set or whatever else. So you start getting invitations from agents as well to kind of push those ideas at you. Some of the bands are open to it within what they're happy with. So like if we asked Catatoni to do all kind of a set of like the early albums, singer's voice just can't do that stuff anymore. So they were like, we can't, he just can't, his voice doesn't do that stuff anymore. So that kind of thing, getting Catatoni to do albums 1 or 2 is just not an option. But Dead and Kings is an absolute belter of an album. So they were more than happy to kind of do that. But then you get a couple of kind of curveball ones coming in. So like Dead Guy being offered to us for Fixation on a Coworker was like, it's like, oh, that's an interesting one. They haven't been around for the best part of 20 years. I'm not sure if they'd ever performed in the UK before. This might be their first ever UK show. And it is with people who like that kind of hardcore, who are into kind of Converge and stuff like that, or Every Time I Die. If you know your stuff from that kind of scene, you know who Dead Guy are. And that'll, for a certain group of people, that'll be a really big draw. But the album itself is great. So we knew there was also always going to be people who just listen to it and go, actually, this is a really great album. I never heard it before this, but I'm happy to watch it at Damnation. So it's kind of a mixed bag. Some of it is we have to go out and kind of seek it. Some of it is a case that people come to us and offer it. And then it is about kind of finding what works for us and what works for the bands as well. So
yeah, I mean, we were after, once we get this idea in our head, because the first time we had Mariner before, we had St. Vitus done, Born Too Late, we've had albums down the years, but I've kind of, what usually happens is a lot of these ones just fall into place because the band's touring that album and then we managed to pick it up. 2020, or was 2021 it would have been, wouldn't it have, was the first time that we actively went out and said, would you play this album? Tiaka got Radio Speed on, would you play this album? Svalbard, would you play this album? And ultimately, it seemed like it was, not that it was easy to do because it always involves money, but it was more of an option than we'd anticipated. And then when that went quite well, it was like, right, okay, well, let's see what we can do. But we did go to one band who's on the lineup this year, a big band, and ask if they do an album, and the singer basically said they would rather die. So it really depends. Bands can look at it and say, like, that's not what we do. Some bands can look at it and say, we'd be up for it if the money's right and it's something that fits, like the way Paul's saying. They're not just going to go back and dig at an album that either didn't like. And it was even small bands when you speak to them, because you don't know this as a fan. So you go to a band that's a mid of the bill band, you say, would you do this album that you released in 2013? And it can be like that, and they're like, we hate that album. Like, you know, like, you don't know that. They don't tell that to the press. They don't say that in an interview, but we hate that album, and with no way we would play it live when the drummer left or whatever. So it was a wee bit of a mixed bag for the ones we went out and actively chased, and then the ones like Fixation of Dark on a Coworker that kind of came out of nowhere. And then, like, from the forum, Scorn Defeat came for that one guy posting the forum, I'd love to see Si doing Scorn Defeat, and we'd been chatting to Si, and then it was like, fuck, 30 years since Scorn Defeat, that'd be a great boom. So something comes from even the oddest of places, like someone making that post in the forum, and the next thing you know, Si are doing this album, this classic for 30 years ago.
Because obviously it's kind of getting a little bit like your trademark now. I think we're all expecting every year what exclusive sets you're going to pull off. How do you judge the cost of that versus the financial risk of getting it all locked in? It's got to be quite a bit of a season for you, bro. Well,
they're all too expensive.
Yeah.
Well, we're finding it out this year very badly. Listen, promotion's a gamble to start with. You start going that next level with the album sets, that's another level of promotion, because the bands and agents management clearly think that all these sets are the be all and end all, and every fan's going to travel for every part of the world to come and see them. And last year, let's be fair, some fans did. You know, we got folk travel for Hawaii because they had to see Street Cleaner getting performed, or coming for Australia because they had to see Jane Doe being performed. So it does attract a different level of attention. The bands do need to go and rehearse them. They are worth more money, and you should have to pay more for them than a band coming in and doing the same set they've played for 64 nights previously. But we see now that perhaps it's not, you don't get just as much back for it as you put in. Like if you took that same amount of money and you were to split that across maybe two bands, would two bands' fan bases bring more than one band's fan base with a different album? Maybe we'll see. There's a lot of, there's no form that MD fills out and tells you at the end of the year which bits you get right and what bits you get wrong, you know. So like you try to live and you learn, and this year, I don't know, maybe we will learn a wee bit maybe we've leaned a bit too heavily into that. You can get the excitement out without going as far as we've gone this year.
But the fan base,
Yep.
I think they're quite loyal to you. I mean, I've just read earlier on today someone's coming from Maryland this year. Yeah, so there is that loyal fan base, but I think you're probably right. There's that expectation maybe now that what exclusive sets we're going to have this year, especially after, you know, Jane Doe last year. Definitely, that was a big one, I think, for a lot of people. But as you said, weighing it up, you could have two bands for that, maybe.
Yeah, and I think it's about trying to pick the right ones as well, because there are bands who have like really good catalogs, and all of the albums are good or great, but no album kind of stands out as like just this spectacular thing that, you know, people. So like Jane Doe is a great example. Everyone loves Jane Doe. Jane Doe is an absolute seminal album, above and beyond anything else converged on. Even though the rest of their stuff is great, everyone knows Jane Doe, and so it has a much better, bigger ring to it. A Carcass doing a Heartwork or something like that would be kind of the same thing. Mayhem doing De Mysterious Dom Satanas. Oh, those kind of things. They're albums that are very synonymous with those bands, and those ones probably work better than, say, if you pick an album that was 10 years old from a band or whatever else, but that sits amongst a wider catalogue of equally good material. It probably doesn't hit in the same way as those kind of seminal albums. And I think that's what we got with last year, with certainly Street Cleaner and At the Gates, Slaughter of the Soul, and Jane Doe and stuff. Those were all those bands' seminal works, all appearing at the same time. And I think that's maybe where some of the difference lies in between that and kind of, say, picking an album because it's the 50-year anniversary of it compared to any other album.
Yeah. I mean, it's a wee bit, it's not a head scratcher, but it's just one of those quirks again of promoting that you see somebody flying in from this year Maryland, but last year somebody from Hawaii, people from Australia, but tons of folk coming in from across Europe, and like they need to spend that couple of grand to come to a wet industrial estate in Manchester because this event is unmissable. But sometimes you're trying to get somebody in Manchester, it's a bit like, I'm not fussed. I only really like Electric Wizard, Dan Allen, Athrak, Armin Van, Julie Christmas in the lineup, so it's not worth it. And you're like,
yeah. You would pay £30 each for one of those as a headliner, easily in Manchester. Yeah.
There was one yesterday as well. I had to look at it because it was, or even this morning, somebody posted to say about the beyond the Redshift, and I think the guy's point was, I wish more things like Beyond the Redshift happened up north, or their equivalent up north would be Manchester. Because Damnation's got such exclusivity across all this, but he couldn't afford Damnation. And I was like, fuck, I wonder how much Beyond the Redshift is. And it's like £57. He got Beyond the Redshift, and that's before you even take into consideration the fact you're in London and it's £40 a pint. So I was a bit like, the difference between Beyond the Redshift and Damnation's like 20 quid. But again, that perception comes like, Beyond the Redshift was up here in Manchester, then I could be able to afford to go to it, but I can't afford to go to Damnation because for whatever reason that person is, Damnation has become this £150 ticket, when in actual fact it's £20 more than would it be for Beyond the Redshift.
And I think you're right, it's a lot of perception, and a lot of people, I think, I hate to say it, but can be quite inherently lazy. We hear it a lot. You hear it a lot on the internet now. Why aren't you playing my hometown? Why aren't you playing at the venue at the bottom of my road? People are less inclined, people still do travel, but there's a proportion of people that are less inclined to.
And
I think it's an inclination thing, but I also think it's a cost thing for a lot of people, and you can't ignore the fact that everything is more expensive. Mortgages are more expensive, petrol is more expensive, and events, I think, cost more for people as well. So they have to, for them, they feel there has to be a bigger benefit to that cost, and so they're setting their own internal benchmarks higher for events that it needs to have. Damnation isn't worth the money unless I have 13 bands I need to see over the course of the day. Well, in reality, you're probably only going to get to see 14 or 15 at the absolute most. So you're wanting lightning in a bottle in that regard, and we're not always going to be able to match exactly what your expectations are.
Yeah,
No,
and I had that conversation with my wife last night. I was like, you know what? You can moan about the cost of living crisis, you can moan about that, but it's our job as promoters to make sure that that's something that you need to be at. I mean, there's no point us sitting here with our violins going, oh my God, Download sold 90,000 tickets, and Harry Styles sold out 4 stadiums night after night. I mean, the parents of those kids that are going to the Harry Styles, they're not rich, you know what I mean? But ultimately, Harry Styles is a show that you need to get to. You need to buy those tickets. Download was a ticket you needed to get to. Metallica were playing twice. You had to be there. It's our job to make sure that Damnation's an event you need to get to. You know what I mean? Not for us to go, oh, it'd be so much better if everybody wasn't skint. I will, obviously, but people are skint, you know, so you need to make your event unmissable.
I think you do suffer sometimes, and I think a lot of things suffered last year of people not buying advance tickets as well, didn't they? People waiting till the last minute.
Aye.
Yeah.
And I think there's definitely kind of, well, we've been having conversations with other promoters, whether it's festival promoters or just kind of local promoters. There's definitely some sort of shift towards that in terms of people kind of waiting to the last minute and kind of getting tickets at the end because they're confident it's not going to sell out. Events are going to sell out in advance, and they can wait and see what the state of their finances are 2 and 3 weeks away. And we've been lucky enough that we've been doing this for so long, we can see where the trends are in ticket sales. So we know we can have a thing of, oh, even if from August tickets aren't exactly where we want to be, we know we usually have kind of stronger Septembers and Octobers to bring things forward. But with lots of new events that come out, and obviously there's been various festivals that have gone to the wall in the last year or so, they don't have that luxury of being able to feel confident to sit there and kind of ride it out and hope that ticket sales are going to come good at the very end. But yeah, there's definitely a kind of a shift towards that of people kind of leaving things till the very last minute, certainly in the last year or two, which is highly anxiety provoking as promoters, but it's just something we're just going to have to, I guess, get used to for the time being.
Yeah, absolutely. And on top of that as well, it's weird because we're not going to complain if there's another 3,000 tickets sold in the last month or so, you know. However, actually presents its own problem because at this stage of the game, you're really trying to dial things into the numbers that are going to be there, you know. And the late flurries are better than the alternative of no late flurry, but at the same time, they're a bit like, even the food vendors as such, we're sitting here looking at numbers saying, right, okay, we're going to have some extra food vendors, but you can't go too far in the other direction and have the place covered in food vendors and then 1,500 less fans, and then the venue come you and saying, you're wasting everybody's time here. You're showing up and paying God knows how much a pitch for your food thing and selling 14 hamburgers because the numbers just weren't nothing like they were last year. So, it's I mean, every promoter's always going to tell you advanced ticket sales are just, you get more sleep, you keep some of your hair, and
I'm looking at you both, sorry.
I still have mine, I'm fine.
It's a better year. It's a better year, believe me, because we've done them all. We've sold out in March and sat the full year. It's weird because last year's advance sales were so strong, and I felt like by this point we were giving so much focus and attention to the bits you were describing, the photography for outside and how we made the place look. And see until you get those tickets sold, I mean, your real priority is really just getting them sold. And your day's work is more promotion. Like me today, I was going round all the different groups and forums and getting the lineup posted again and trying to get people, get eyeballs in the poster. That's the point last year. I was a bit like, what difference does it make? We're selling the tickets anyway, you know, so I can spend that same time going and make sure we can get looking at the Gates picture for 2015 or something that we can put in a fence. So advance sales are, I understand why fans are a bit like, I mean, I'm the same. I mean, ultimately, I'm like, oh, that show's coming up, I'll get my ticket closer to the time when it's actually on my radar. But advance sales are a big help if anyone can manage them.
So still talking about the exclusivity, it's a really strong lineup this year. I mean, you're looking at 11 exclusive shows and UK debuts. So it's I think it's looking quite strong personally, as someone who's been to Damnation for a long time. How do you guys feel about it?
I think the exclusives. I think I'm really happy with the exclusives, and I think at some level you need something to kind of stand out and have things a bit different. So, like, if you take the Enslaved shows, Enslaved played Arctangent, they played Incineration Fest already this year, so they've already been here and done 2 festivals. So, getting them across to do something different is kind of what's necessary, because you don't want people to think I'm just getting the same show I got at Arctangent or Incineration. I'm really happy with the lineup. I think there's a really kind of good mix of stuff. And for me, I've been kind of pretty much listening to the Damnation playlist nonstop for the last 2 weeks. And there's stuff in there, you kind of one of the things for me, I keep forgetting how good an album Dead End Kings is. Every time I listen to it, I'm like, this is so good. It always kind of catches me out. And then, just other things. I think there's lots of new bands on there that I think will be really exciting for people to see. So I'm really kind of happy with the mix of stuff that we've got across the 2 days. Yeah,
I mean, even Damnation by itself. I mean, this is definitely my favourite Damnation lineup for me personally, and I've been repeated in every interview I've ever done. We don't book Damnation for us. We don't. So if you get a headline band. A lot of bands, but like I'm not really that fond of that band. I wouldn't listen to that type of music. However, I know it's appreciated by our fan base, and there's going to be a big demand for it. I'm happy enough to book it. But for me personally, I mean, in a day that I'm going to see like Amon Ra, Julie Christmas, Animal Nathrak, Maybe She Will, Psy, Nordic Giants, Dead Guy, Downfall of Gear, I'm really excited about. I mean, that's a full day before you even got to like Electric Wizard, Enslaved and Catatonia, which I'd happily go see as well. But those bands are what bands that I would go and pay money to go to Glasgow and see their own gig at. So I'm a bit like, I was a bit when we're done, because I'd have thought that if you were to pick 3 absolute cornerstone bands for Damnation, where you're going to hit all the Venn diagram, you're going to be like, people are going to be excited about their winners. It's Electric Wizard, Amon Ra, and Nathrak. Through all the years we've ever done, they've always been popular bookings, always in demand, always people that haven't been to Damnation before, they want to see them. So when I announced them and it wasn't like the same excitement as I'd expected, I was a bit like, that's an odd one, because that's like, you're really hitting. I mean, Electric Wizard do UK shows so infrequently. They're never, I mean, they done Desert Fest last year, and before that, what they've done, they never tour. It's the only show they're going to play in the UK until this year. You've got Nathrak, done that one show in London, and have done nothing since before the pandemic. I'm really chuffed. I'm really chuffed with the lineup, but ultimately, it's no me you need to please. I'm not a guy that's out there to buy the ticket, but I think the lineup's amazing. I'm looking at it right now. I honestly think the lineup's incredible.
Like you say, the Electric Wizards, I know they're a much wanted band. I mean, you've only got to look at what Vicky says, trying to book them for Bloodstock and never able to book them. So they are very much that must-see band, aren't they, of the weekend for lots of fans.
Absolutely. I mean, it's like, and you don't like this idea. I know people are taking a bit of a pummeling for some quarters about the lineup they'd be weak, and we probably let that slide. But somebody made the point of this might not be the lineup for you, but it's not weak. I mean, like Electric Wizard headline Psycho Las Vegas, they headline all the Desert Fest, they headline the Tent, the Valley at Hellfest. They are a bona fide fucking headliner in anybody's context. It's like that Enslaved show, the debut album, headlined Party Sands up there in Germany. Catatonia headlining dozens of festivals. Amon Ra headlined the London Desert Fest. These are big bands. It might not be bands that you particularly like. You might have wanted Obituary or Cannibal Corpse. I'm sorry we never got them for you this year, but it's not a weak lineup. It's a strong lineup. It's just not to some people's tastes.
I think that's just a poor excuse by a lot of people personally, though. I think all lineups are strong because in the context of the year they're booked, aren't they? And what's available, who's touring, and actually what people are listening to at that time.
And Damnation's got such a small, you're a bit like, once you take away a small handful of bands, it's like, what do you have left for a headliner that can, one, do an arena and also still suit that Damnation. I mean, if you're saying that like a Lamb of God and an Arch Enemy and a Cradle of Filth are all 2 Bloodstock downloads, what you're left with for us, you know what I mean? And I think that's why we doubled down a wee bit with the album section, a bit like, right, okay, no one's pretending that Enslaved are an arena band. However, if you've got these sets that are down to 10,000 people in Germany, alongside Leprous doing it, alongside Catatonia doing it, then maybe collectively it becomes an arena bill, which ultimately that might prove to be the case. And when we get there come November 4th and the place is relatively busy, then maybe that's exactly what we have achieved. But there's only so many, like, who do you want? Because sometimes people go like, Obituary. Well, I mean, Obituary headline Damnation's a stretch. You know what I mean? It's like, we just want to see Obituary all night in Manchester to 400-500 people. You're not talking about Machine Head here. So it's tough to say, well, who are the bands that, one, could headline Damnation, still feel like a Damnation band, and then two, the second hardest bit is, are they available and affordable?
I suppose it's a fine balancing act with all of you, isn't it? Trying to get everything logistically to come together. Because I know you've had bad years. We spoke about this before. One of my favourite years was your worst year, 2009. So me personally, it was a brilliant year, but for you guys, it wasn't as successful as you would have liked. So it's kind of swings and roundabouts, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's the thing, that for me and Gav, that's one of our favourite years. Again, we don't make lineups for ourselves, but in terms of actual bands that I would like, 2009 was one of my favourite years for me personally. But it just, for whatever reason, didn't resonate the same way with the fans, and it just happens that way. Some years it works, some years it doesn't. We're not going to change how we do things. The approach is always still going to be the same in terms of booking bands and trying to get something a little bit different, not straying too far down that kind of the Bloodstock, Metal Hammer, downloady kind of big arch enemy bands. Because the moment you start booking arch enemies and Lamb of Gods, it stops being Damnation. It then becomes the Lamb of God show with a load of smaller supports just to fill out a full day's worth of music. And that's not what Damnation is. That's what Damnation has never been. So we're not going to change for that. We might have to refine and change a few things, but nothing drastic like that. So,
and it's a completely different fan base as well, isn't it? The Lamb of Gods of the world compared to now Natcraft fans. It's a completely different fan base. Yeah.
Lamb of God have got tons of fans.
I'll plead the fifth on this one.
I say that as Nathrac's biggest fan, but it's like, that's a frustrating, because you can find yourself when you're just like, fuck, if we could just get things moving, and you know how much these other bands cost. You know, you're a bit like, the budget still. I mean, Damnation costs a fortune to put on. So I mean, all you need to do is combine a couple of these bands, and you can ultimately get the bigger one with a bigger fan base. But you're just like, it goes against, Paul says, it's going against everything we're trying to do. I mean, when you said about exclusives as well, like, we're in a WhatsApp chat with a bunch of music fans, and these other festivals get announced about Europe. And the point that one of the guys made was they're interchangeable. I mean, it's just whoever's on tour. So you've got that big tour that's going through and passing, and it hits Germany, and it hits Holland, and it goes through France. And these festivals all pop up pretty much with the same goddamn lineup. And maybe that's the easiest and cheapest and most convenient way to do it, but it's not as exciting as going and getting Julie Christmas and getting Leprous to play Cole and Electric Wizard to come and do their one show they're going to do. It's like, if you just want to be the next in line of whatever that tour is, and then but calling it something different, it's not very exciting to promote like that. And
it's challenging as well, though, isn't it? Because obviously we talked about the cost of living a bit earlier. The cost of touring as well has tripled. So for bands to actually come over here, you know, it's significant amount of money, isn't it? Really.
And it's a problem, because the band that comes across that's going to sell you the 100 tickets that beforehand you were getting for, I don't know, £500 or £1 grand or whatever, that band now wants £3,000, but it's still just selling you the 300 tickets, the 100 tickets. Nothing's changed in the context of how big the band's got. And a lot of times the band's not even pretending. I'm not even saying like, oh, we're a much bigger band. They're just like, this is what it's going to cost us now, because we've got Brexit to deal with. We need to go and get these certificates of sponsorship. We've got Carney at the border with our merch. Petrol's more expensive. Van hire's more expensive. So we might have been willing to come to Damnation and maybe no make ends meet, but have a great show. But ultimately, for us to make ends meet, it's no longer 500 or $1,000. It's closer to $3,000. And we're like, right, okay, well, here's the $3,000. But it's still, the ticket for Damnation is still the same price, and it's still attracting the same amount of people. So you do that across however many bands, and next thing you know that the zeros are stacking up in your cost column. So it's not just as simple as the fact that everything's more expensive. I mean, bands are more expensive for a good reason. I mean, you can't even blame the bands for asking for that money.
Definitely. So previously, you've made a very small comment around a fourth or a tented stage outside. Is that something that you would consider? I remember everything you said. Yeah.
Yeah. If rather than what's it? If you build it, they will come. It's more the other way around. If they come, we will build it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like if we had, so this year in terms of, there's not going to be any surprise fourth stages or anything like that getting announced in the last 6 weeks of Damnation. The bill's the bill at the minute. Hopefully it stays that way. We don't lose anyone now over the next 7 weeks or anything like that. What if next year, if 2024 rolled around and by March we had done half our ticket sales or 60% of them, we were in a really good place with advanced ticket sales. Just like last year, that, as Gav said, at that point, there's a certain amount of pressure off. You're like, oh, right, great. We're going to probably cover our costs and that kind of thing. So what can we do now to enhance it? Okay, what do we want to do? Do we want to do a fourth stage outside or something like that and fill it with lots of the really excellent UK metal bands, but maybe that there just isn't, because there just aren't enough slots of Damnation that they don't get a chance and whatever else or something like that, or do something a little bit different, a little bit left field. But that's a luxury that you can afford to have when you've got the reassurance that there's X amount of tickets already in the bank. So we'd love to do that. We'd love to be able to explore all sorts of like outrageous options of different things we could want to look at doing. Bigger production, bringing in pyro and all sorts of things you could do when you have all the kind of the extra money, all the extra bells and whistles there. But it is a case of you kind of need to have the confidence, otherwise it's just another expense to add to that cost column. So yeah, so if they come, we would build it. But just not for this year. Yeah,
I mean, I think I've said it before. I mean, people don't buy into your promises. When people buy into lineups, they like see a band and they go like, boom. The reason that Hellfest sells out or even Glasgow so far is because people know the experience that they're going to buy. Now, Damnation doesn't, even on our scale. Unfortunately, we don't have that same magic wand or marketing or whatever it's taking for these events to get like that. But I've said it before, and it's a God's honest truth. Damnation sold out the first day. It would be the best and strongest Damnation you would ever see, because that entire year would be spent, with Paul says, with the bells and whistles. A fourth stage would absolutely be included. There would be more of everything. The outside production would be amazing. We'd have bigger tents, we'd have more seating, we'd have a fire pit, we'd have extra music, fucking pyro on every stage, bigger screens. And the whole thing it'd be a different event. But you can't go and add that 20-30 grand onto the bill until you've got the 20-30 grand to spend, you know. And until that point, as I say, until you sell the tickets, your job's really to make sure that they do sell. So it's an unfortunate, because it would be, I mean, 2024, 25, 26, you go in and you do 6,000 tickets or anything like 6,000 tickets off the bat the first month. You'd be 11 months of gravy, 11 months of you just being able to go and say, oh, should we spend that extra 10 grand in that band to headline? It's a bit risky because we don't know if the sales are going to be there, and then you'd be like, okay, well, we can, you know what I mean? And you'd have your bands that otherwise were a bit like, right, just make sure, because if that doesn't go the way we want it to go, you could be looking at the losses could be quite substantial. Yeah, it'd be brilliant to be in that position, to have the reassurance, as Gav said, like a Glastonbury or Hellfest, to just sell out immediately, irrespective of what bands people work. If we ever got to that point, having the kind of 6,000, then that kind of leaves me and him just 11 months to sit and think and plan and refine and make better. And
And it's only got that it's just going to be ultimately in the attendees' best interest. And you go, because it'll just make for a much better event across things. Because that's all we do is sit there between us, go, what can we do? How can we change that? We can't throw money at it because the budget, because the ticket sales that were dictated by ticket sales here. But on a sold out event, we sit there and go, all right, this is what we have. How can we make that better? What would be the nice thing? Okay, oh, what about this thing? What about getting these extra vendors in? Okay, what about this kind of idea? Okay, we could do more coaches and stuff like that to more further parts of the country. All those extra little bits to refine it, so then it becomes, and it's at that point you kind of almost need to have that first year of it, or a couple of years of that, because then you have the time to make it this such a refined event that then you get then it becomes this whole a destination festival or something like that. They go, it was such a good day, everything was so on point, the food was Michelin star and everything else, everything was brilliant, the sound was perfect, the lights production was spot on. The next year I'm going to book in advance again because I had such a good time. I don't want to miss out on the next year. And then it becomes that kind of self-fulfilling way that the likes of Hellfest have managed to get it to. But you need the ticket sales through the door first to get to that point.
So away from the festival, this year you diversified quite a bit with your Damnation clothing brand. So how did that come about and how is that doing?
So how it came about, do you know what? Because I do this full time now, and I had the time to do it, and the change to get into the detail a wee bit is like it changed the merch last year. We went from your standard, your Gilded and Fruit of the Loom to the Stanley Stella, and I was a bit like, holy shit, this merch is nice, it feels nice, rather than just, oh, this is a band that I like, and I'm happy to wear a potato sack because it's got a band that I like on the front. So there's my, I think more people would think like me. I think that people would quite enjoy nice feeling quality merch. And why is it not readily available? And why is it, if people want to dress any way alternative for whatever's there in George's Asda, it needs to be just cheap and cheerful and a bit shit. And that was the thinking behind it. And I thought, well, sometimes as well, I've got a Damnation to do on just now, and sometimes I go up to the school and I don't particularly want Pig Destroyer or Nathrak or Fuck Pig or something in the back of my day. Sometimes I just want to wear a nice. Sometimes
Not my husband, then, yeah.
You're far more considerate than I am. I turn up to school dressed as anything.
he's trying to run everywhere. So I'm like, I'd like to put on what's essentially still feels like a bit of alternate music apparel. However, it's not necessarily linked to the festival. And we know a lot of designers, and there was a lot of designers I saw for other bands were using. There's an opportunity here to come up with some stuff that's a bit different for everyday wear. That it's just a wee bit different from wearing something that's got a band line up or a tour date or something on the back. It might have a wee bit of fun with it, like the Pink Disney one. So it's done okay, considering that it came out of nowhere and it sold out some of the shapes and sizes and designs. So it's fine. I mean, what it really needs is it needs that bigger, more ambitious step away from just a few t-shirts. It needs to be a proper clothing range. It needs, like, I don't know, windbreakers and shorts and
women's fit t-shirts.
Women's fit t-shirts, oversized t-shirts, stuff that you're getting that is a bit like that is different from, you're not going to get that at an obituary show or even at a Damnation Festival. You're going to get that, and it's got this different style to it now. And much like the ticket sales, when we're talking about that, I can't just throw 40, 50 grand at it, you know, like, nice to see if there's some sort of interest there, and the interest is there, and we have sold okay so far, considering it's not really doesn't have much behind it other than me putting a couple of posts on Facebook. So yes, it started off reasonably well, pretty chuffed with it. We had that exclusive tee that we took to Art Tangent, which was something different for us, sold out in the medium and large almost instantly. So yeah, it's something I really wanted. I mean, Damnation's taking up a lot of my time right now because we're getting into the nitty-gritty, but after that, I hope to like build into the new year, up into Christmas and the new year, and see if we can really get legs to the Damnation clothing line, because there's no reason why it shouldn't. There's decent clothing lines out there that are relatively basic and don't offer the range of styles or even the merch quality that the Damnation clothing does. So I don't see why there wouldn't be an appetite for what we do, and what we've seen so far is there is a wee bit of appetite for what we do. So I think, let's say, hopefully it comes good in 2024 when I've got a wee bit more time to get the attention. Paul has nothing to do with Damnation Global, so he's just
Sorry,
sitting here
Paul.
nodding away.
I think you're right, though.
Right.
There's nothing more disappointing than spending 40 quid on a shirt and washing it once and it not fitting properly and the print going. And I think merch is so expensive now, and alternative t-shirts are expensive off other sites, like, I don't know, Lost Society, SOS, places like that. So it is good to have a quality, and I think fans did. I certainly did. I've got the same hoodie you've got, and I noticed the quality shift when, pins and knuckles and stuff, and it is a lot better.
Yeah, but the thing is, well, you have to take that first one, because our merch for a long time was rock bottom. I mean, we used to get Gildan stuff used to be very. I mean, we talk about prices going up. The prices are blanks at any level, from Fruit Olympic Gildan right up to your Stanley Stella and Earth Positive. It's all rocketing. I mean, you used to be able to get a t-shirt made, printed, the whole thing ready to get sold for between £3 and £4. Sometimes I'm getting t-shirts back for Damnation Clothing like 10 quid made before they've even been sold in any VAT. I mean, you're a bit like with the margin by the time you're given a festival 20%. You feel a bit like that band that's going on Facebook and crying. It's like £2 profit. It would have been made, but you've also brought back 15 triple XLs or something. So there's not. It's difficult. It's difficult to do and difficult to get it right. But I think there's definitely a market there, because we've seen it. Anyway, it worked. We took it to Art Tangent. We had a t-shirt that was up against another 50 bands and Art Tangent merch. It had nothing to do with anything but the design, and it sold. So there is a market there. I just need to find the time to plough into it.
I managed to miss out on the Art Tangent t-shirts.
Me too.
Yeah, same. So last question for you guys before I let you go. We're 50 days away. We're starting to get close now. What are both of your hopes for this year?
For the 2023 event?
Yeah.
I suppose for me, like, in a very boring way, just a really successful in terms of no major hiccups, no major disasters on the day. And that's all I ever want from the day, is that a bit like the analogy of like the swan going across the water. I don't mind if backstage I'm running around headless and it looks like the place is on fire, as long as the people who are attending have a good day, and they don't need to know that the shit's gone sideways backstage. But if for everyone in attendance it looks like everything's gone well and there's been no hiccups and the bands have turned up and they've played on time, they've got off stage on time, the next band has gone on time, I'll be pretty happy with that. If I manage to get to watch Julie Christmas and Amon-Ra in amongst all that, that'd be even better again.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty similar to says. I mean, I feel like we've done a lot right last year. We moved up to the arena level production. We are officially the Europe's biggest indoor metal festival. I mean, look at the state of the 2 years. I mean, this is the two guys you've got running this. You know what I mean? It's like in itself.
But I think people were forgetting that you've gone from Leeds to the Beck, and it almost looks seamless to people outside. Yeah, I mean, just did that transition. Yeah.
For all we're willing to take the piss at ourselves and each other. I mean, it's done. With 2 hours wake up, it's done professionally. You know what I mean? It's no accident that we came away from last year and the main complaints were, right, okay, some food vendors never showed up and we need a wee bit more seating. I mean, what could have happened if it wasn't what we put in here last year's? There was no sound. A band wasn't there. The fucking stage times were all over the place. It was setting fire, you know. So it's this year. It's about a case of, right, let's get back in there and make the tweaks. Let's make the tweaks and make sure when people come away from it this year, they're a bit like, you know what? I might never be in love with a big tin arena. And maybe I'll always enjoy the wee 250 capacity rooms where it's got a bit more character. But Damnation's a great event. The bands are great. The sound and atmosphere was great. The people who come were all great. And we had a great time, and we need to be back next year, because that's what we want to build on. I don't want this idea of thinking I go back to, let's go back to Leeds and just do. I mean, it's just, even if the money was there, you take the exact same profit margin, you say, Gavin, just make life easy for yourself and take the salary and just do it Leeds. Why give yourself the same fucking hassle and potentially losing money and do it Manchester? Because Manchester gets me up in the morning. Seeing the production we're getting in this main stage and look at it and be like, that wouldn't look at a place at fucking Download. You know what I mean? It's like, look at the cinema screen. It's got a 12-metre long cinema screen. It makes last year's screen look like a TV. And you're like,
Definitely. So thank you so much for both of your times. I know you're exceptionally busy, again, with only 50 days out, and I look forward to seeing you then. Thank you.
Cheers, Cass.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Always a pleasure.
Keep up the good work at Razor's Edge.
Thanks for listening. Make sure you keep up to date with future episodes by subscribing to our channels. For more information on this podcast, or for all the latest music news, reviews, interviews and more, head over to our website, www.therazorsedge.rocks.